All right, good afternoon and welcome everyone to this Immigration Access to Justice Commission community webinar. We have a really wonderful panel here with us today, so we're very thankful for everyone who's agreed to lend their time to this effort. And so before I introduce our panel and turn it over to them, I'm going to do just a bit of introduction to this series and housekeeping. So my name is Grace Spulak, and I am the director of the New Mexico Commission on Access to Justice. And we're a Supreme Court commission, and we work to improve access to our courts and provide information to our community partners around the state. With me is Juan Abeta and Tesha Henderson. Juan has been really instrumental in helping us develop these webinars and build connections in our communities. And Tesha works with me at the Administrative Office of the Courts, and she is going to be helping out today with this webinar as well. So as we go through our presentations, you may have questions. We are asking you to put those questions in the Q&A and the chat. And you can also introduce yourselves in the chat. I see some people are doing that now. And so we will answer all of those questions. We'll have a time for questions after our first presentation and after our second presentation. So we are not ignoring your questions. We will get to them after the presentations. So just be patient with that. And so with that all said, I will go ahead and introduce our panel and turn it over to them. So with us today, we have Zoila Alvarez-Hernandez, who is with the ACLU of New Mexico. And Zoila is an immigration rights attorney dedicated to immigration detention issues, increasing ICE and CBP accountability, and combating the entanglement of local resources going to increased immigration enforcement. Through her work, Zoila seeks to enforce immigrant civil rights through strategic litigation, education, and policy advocacy. She attended the UNM School of Law and in 2018 worked as a student attorney for the Harvard Immigration and Refugee Law Clinic at Greater Boston Legal Services, where she represented South American and Caribbean asylees. Zoila hopes her work will help improve the health and well-being of New Mexico's immigrant children and families. Also from the ACLU, we have Maria Coronado. Maria is an immigrant rights field organizer for the ACLU Las Cruces Regional Center for Border Rights, working in Doña Ana, Luna, Grant, and Otero counties. She was born in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, and she moved in the 1980s to Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua with her family, and soon after that to El Paso, Texas. Maria has volunteered with different agencies, including the Housing Authority, and she's active in community politics. She worked as an internal labor organizer with SEI UX Texas and El Paso, securing salary increases for employees at several hospitals. Maria is passionate about immigration reform due to her own personal experience. And from the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center with us, we have Emma Race, who was originally from Boston. Emma began working at the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center in 2018 as an AmeriCorps Public Ally Fellow. Now Emma manages New Mexico Immigrant Law Center's intakes and partnerships, focuses on improving services for immigrant survivors of crime, especially domestic violence and sexual assault survivors, by creating partnerships with local service providers and assisting potential clients to navigate the legal system. Emma also supervises the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center's social services programming, which connects clients to community resources to address their needs holistically. She graduated summa cum laude from Connecticut College with a BA in English and Latin American and Latino Studies. In Connecticut, she worked with a coalition of community organizations to start an immigrant storytelling workshop series, and she continues to dedicate herself to migrant justice. Shalini Thomas is the legal program manager at New Mexico Immigrant Law Center and also a full DOJ accredited representative. Before joining the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, She worked for Diocesan Migrant and Refugee Services in El Paso, Texas, where she was an accredited representative for 5 years. And so thank you all of you for being here with us today. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Zoila and Maria to start us off.
Hello, thank you for having us today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Will you give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Awesome. Wonderful. So I'm Zoila Alvarez-Hernandez, and here's my colleague, Maria Coronado. We will be talking to you a little bit about some of the immigrant rights work that the ACLU does in the community. Maria?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for attending this webinar. I think we are going to learn a lot, and hopefully we will have a lot of questions. I want to start with who we are. ACLU of New Mexico has been an important part of New Mexico in advancing civil rights and legal freedom to everyone, for everyone. We are an affiliate from the National American Civil Liberties Union, and we work with them very closely in different issues and projects. We are the largest civil liberties organization in the state, working in the courts, in the legislations, and out in our communities. Our current priorities include LGBTQ equality, freedom of speech, reproductive freedom, immigrant rights, privacy concern, police abuse, fair treatment, criminal justice, you name it, we work on it. But today I'm going to be talking about immigrant rights. It's the fundamental constitutional protection of due process and equal protection under our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Regardless of your status, you have rights under the Constitution. So that's what that's what I'm going to be speaking. But also, I want to talk about a little bit more what are rights. Rights are the rules that help make everyone equal. You have the same rights when you are born. These are called human rights because every person has them. We have them. You also have legal rights, which are they are backed by the law. It is important to know your rights so that if people try to take them away, you can stop them. It is extremely important to know your legal and constitutional rights. These rights are the foundation of our legal system and are in place for the protection of every citizen of the country. Failure to know your rights, failure to know and utilize these rights leads to other erosion of possibility to getting yourself deeply into trouble. Can I have the next slide, please?
So here, sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of the work that we do. Some of the legal efforts that we are currently working on in the state of New Mexico are such cases as excessive use of force by local law enforcement, whether that be at a county level like sheriffs or at a city level or state police. We also deal with Border Patrol issues and ICE when there's excessive use of force or a civil rights violation. We have cases around transgender discrimination, pregnancy and breastfeeding, or pumping accommodations for employees, or even in public spaces, medical neglect issues in detention, whether that be immigration detention or whether that be in a prison or jail setting. We have cases, a case against Albuquerque schools due to some very public treatment that a Native American student received at Zoila High School. We've also been trying to work to decrease the population in prisons, in jails, so that people can adequately social distance during this COVID pandemic. That has been an ongoing struggle. And that group of people would be people who are within a year of the release date and are still going to be held to certain parole and probation restrictions. And so that's been an ongoing battle that we've had, as well as, sometimes there are cases of sexual abuse by corrections officers, or incidents such as tear gassing in ICE detention centers for peaceful hunger striking around issues of COVID precautions in these facilities. So we do a wide array of cases, and the next slide will talk about a little bit of our intake process. Maria?
Thank you, Zoila. If you visit our webpage, you will find the ISA form, and we have it English and Spanish. We prioritize some cases related on civil rights violations, including the ones that you see below: freedom of speech and press, freedom of religion, the right to privacy, equal protection and discrimination, due process. You can fill it out and it will be automatically sent to our team. And one of our team on the legal side will get in contact with you. Unfortunately, because we are on the pandemic state, it will take between 6 to 8 weeks for somebody to reach out to you. The form is self-explanatory. You will be also, if you need to scan a document, you can do so. Any questions, please feel free to contact either Zoila or myself.
Thank you, Maria. I will be touching a little bit about a new law that passed last year during the legislative session and went into effect in July. That new law is called the New Mexico Civil Rights Act. And we just want to highlight that today because it's a recent change that applies to all New Mexico residents, regardless of immigration status, and it's an added protection. So what is the Civil Rights Act? The New Mexico Civil Rights Act came into existence because prior to its existence, individuals whose state constitutional rights had been violated didn't have a way to bring their cases in New Mexico state courts. Federal law does allow for such type of lawsuits, but the law also entails a lot of legal barriers that make it almost impossible for a plaintiff who had their civil rights violated to prevail. The main issue being qualified immunity, which means that because it's really sad that that happened to you, but because this government official or because this law enforcement officer is protected by qualified immunity while they're working within the scope of their employment, you can't sue them at all. So it fundamentally goes against the access to justice part, right? You don't even get your day in court. You file your case and then it gets dismissed because of qualified immunity. This New Mexico Civil Rights Act allows for people to have the opportunity to go through that process. The New Mexico Civil Rights Act allows individuals to bring constitutional claims in our state courts against public bodies without the hurdle of qualified immunity. The last time we checked, we are one of 2 states in the entire United States to have this. The other state is Colorado. So how did this pass? This has been work that's been happening for the last 20 years, but the last few years of very public killings, at the hands of law enforcement has brought a new light to some issues around law enforcement accountability and some of the barriers that exist around that issue. And so, cases such as Breonna Taylor's and George Floyd's, that sort of attention and advocacy was what enabled our local legislators to get a little brave and allow for a wide spectrum of localized accountability on law enforcement agencies when a civil rights violation has been made. What is allowed under the New Mexico Civil Rights Act? Lawsuits to enforce the New Mexico Bill of Rights that includes 24 different sections in our Bill of Rights. It specifies that qualified immunity will not be a defense to be able to just have the case dismissed and not really get your day in court. It allows for compensatory damages and injunctive relief and attorney's fees, which has been another barrier because a lot of times attorneys don't want to take cases and take on the expense of litigation and a lawsuit if they're not able to recover damages or some form of compensation for their time. This allows for that. It's limited and restricted, but it allows for that. So it's a path forward. Punitive damages, which means damages just for punishment so that the behavior is not repeated, are not allowed under the Civil Rights Act, the New Mexico one. And liability is limited to $2 million per claimant, which does include the litigation costs and attorney's fees. $2 million is not the standard rate. It's a pretty high bar to get to, but it warrants a good range to have the majority of people's claims addressed and justly resolved. Now, what kind of cases can be brought under the New Mexico Civil Rights Act? Cases against law enforcement for violating people's civil rights, whether that's excessive use of force, unlawful searches and seizures, and false imprisonment. False imprisonment is a little bit of a term of art. It could be something as being held over by law enforcement past the necessary period, right? Ticket, for example, a simple car search or a mobile citation could take 30 minutes. It could take an hour, it could take 2 hours. And that's when you start to ask yourself, am I just being falsely detained? Are they going to bring a dog or another officer? Like, why this is taking too long? Like, why am I being held here? So it doesn't actually have to be like you are in a jail cell. It could be something as just being restricted from your movement in an unreasonable timeline. There's also cases where individuals' right to vote have been violated, where an individual's right to practice their religion has been violated, or who has been compelled, sort of pressured, coerced to support or practice a certain religion. And that could take place in different public agencies or even like in detention centers. Or jails or prisons. Cases where an individual's right to speech has been violated. The ACLU is very well known for being a organization that defends freedom of speech very adamantly. And cases where an individual has been discriminated against by a public actor. A public actor can include like the MVD or animal shelter, or like something that is ran and funded by the state or law enforcement. Cases where a public body has violated somebody's due process rights. The Constitution provides us a certain process in order, especially if something's being taken away, whether that's a financial or civil liberty, when there's a government agency involved. What kind of cases are not allowed under the New Mexico Civil Rights Act? Well, individuals employed by a public body cannot use the New Mexico Civil Rights Act to pursue claims arising out of somebody's employment by like the government. However, there are other avenues for people to pursue those sort of claims, like employment discrimination or whistleblower protections. Also cases against water associations, land grants, sequia or community ditch, water or soil conservation district type issues is also not protected under the New Mexico Civil Rights Act. The key part here is that this law passed last legislative session and came into effect on July 1st. So if the incident happened June 30th, it is not protected of 2021. It has to have happened July 1st moving forward. Who can sue? The person, the individual who was injured, their parent or guardian, or a guardian ad litem, which means somebody who might have like a special disability or some mental capacity that they are unable to adequately represent themselves. A guardian ad litem can be appointed. There are statutes of limitations, so you have 3 years to bring a New Mexico Civil Rights Act lawsuit forward, and you are required to provide the government agency or law enforcement agency a year's notice within a year. So when it happens, within 12 months, you have to file a notice letting them know that you are considering filing a lawsuit, sort of that you are in the process of investigating and considering your options and all of that stuff, but that you are looking to file a lawsuit. It's really important that you find a good attorney and that you find or help your constituents connect to an experienced civil rights attorney. This is not the kind of case where you want to go to just any personal injury attorney or somebody who does medical malpractice or criminal defense. Civil rights is a very specialized area, and it's important that you go to an experienced civil rights attorney. And I will pass it on to my colleague Maria on some Know Your Rights stuff. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will answer after she goes through her slides.
Thank you, Zoila. So now I'm going to be talking about Know Your Rights. The scenario will be, the two scenarios will be for any circumstances that you get into with an agent, either a police, sheriff, ICE, or Border Patrol agent, okay? This is for your organization can invite me over to do a Know Your Rights presentation for your members and also for the staff. So what are your rights if an officer goes to your home? If an officer enters your home without a warrant, remember, you can refuse to consent to them entering, but you need to verbally say in it, I do not consent to this search. You and everyone in the house do not have to answer any questions to the officer, if any question that they might ask. Also, you need to say it verbally. I am exercising my right to remain silent. After that, then remain silent because everything that you said can be used against you. You also have the right to not sign any documents you don't understand and without your attorney presence. Also, you need to say it verbally. I will not sign anything until I speak with my attorney or lawyer. One of the things that I didn't know until I came and worked with the ACLU is that I have the right to record a video or take pictures of the agents, okay? And that's why it's very important. As soon as you start recording, you stay quiet. Get the right to remain silent. Why? Because you are recording and you don't know if you are going to say something that they will they will take you into more problems. And this is very important. Before you open the door, okay, ask the officer to identify themselves, what agency they are working with, and if they have a warrant signed by a judge. Okay, because what I have seen in many places, specifically in Chaparral and here in Las Cruces, is that they say, yes, we have a warrant, but the paperwork that they are showing the people is an internal form that ICE use. So in order for them to enter your house and to go through your personal stuff, it has to be a warrant signed by a district judge. Can I have the next one, please? And also the rights when you are stopped and you are driving. If they stop you, anyone, for example, a police or a sheriff, you can ask them, it's your right to ask them, why are you stopping me or why are you pulling me over, okay? If they don't give you a reason, ask, am I free to go or are you detaining me? But also if they stop you, the reason that they have to give you is something because you are missing a license plate, because you are missing a tailgate light, or you are driving irresponsible, okay? One of our Chaparral members, he was stopped and the police said, because I can and I will stop you whenever I want to stop you. So that was not a reason. It has to be because the way you are driving or something is wrong with your car. You always have the right to remain silent, again. And remember, you also have the right to take video or take pictures. You don't have to discuss your immigration status without any law enforcement agent. You can say, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. You don't have to consent to a search without a warrant, again. And you can say it, I do not consent for a search. Again, please be careful. Always put your hands visible to the agent. Don't do any last minute, I'm going to reach for my phone and it's on the right side. You need to tell the agent, okay, that you are reaching for your phone to record. Go to the next one, please. Please get involved. Real changes start with you, and every one of us can help make a difference. ACLU volunteers help us a lot, turn American most cherished principle into reality. The ACLU is foremost civil rights and liberties organizations, and we are a movement of people fighting together for justice, freedom, fairness, and equality for all. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also visit our webpage for updates. We are trying to do more, to have more information in Spanish. And also just to tell you that right now we have a campaign going on, Border Humanity campaign. If you look into that webpage, you can upload videos in regards to 4 questions that we are asking, and maybe Zoila can talk a little bit about this. And we are asking the Biden administration to end Title 42. Zoila?
Thank you for that. Yeah, we are actually in the middle of a campaign. I will share the link down below. It is around access to asylum. around MPP, which is migrant protection protocols, which is also known as the Remain in Mexico policy. And Title 42 is a CDC order that prevents anyone from coming through the country and applying for asylum. They just automatically get expelled and returned to Mexico. Or whatever country they arrived from at a port of entry if they came through a airport or at the border. And so I will be happy to share that link below. There's lots of advocacy happening on different stages. We thank you for your time, and if anyone's just interested in learning a little bit more, please feel free to reach out. And if anybody has any questions, please throw them in the Q&A or in the chat. Thank you for your time today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Zoila and Maria. We have a few questions. So the first is about whether or not the ACLU would be able to assist in cases where CYFD may have violated immigrants' rights in cases of supposed abuse and neglect.
Thank you for that question. I responded to that individual. If they could email me a little bit more details. We do engage in a lot of systemic type cases. So this is sort of an established pattern. It's definitely something we could help investigate. And I would just need a little bit more information as to how their civil rights are being violated. Is it due process? Is it discrimination? And so please feel free to email me to that individual. I sent them my email so that we can help connect you with some resources and also just take a little bit more information as to what exactly is going on. One of our greatest tools in the state is the public records, IPRA. So we are actually able to investigate a lot. We have the skills, we have the resources in order to be able to help look a little bit deeper into some of those issues. And so we would be happy to look into that.
Great, thanks. And then we have a couple of questions in the chat. The first is related to recording. And basically the question is, why officers tell people to stop recording in situations. And I think, Maria, maybe then if you could just talk a little bit about what people might do in that kind of a situation.
I will pass it to Zoila because she's the attorney. I'm not an attorney, but great question.
Sorry, finding my unmute button. You have to be really tactful and you have to be really respectful when engaging with law enforcement, even just for your own protection. Any information that you're providing to your constituents, you want to make sure that you're not actually adding danger. But you are also very politely able to tell them, actually, I'm legally able and allowed to record any law enforcement encounter. There is no protection for that. So you are able to pull out your device and record the encounter. You could also ask them that they ensure that their body camera is turned on, because in New Mexico, all law enforcement is required to wear a body camera. And so that might be like a less, confrontational way to do it. But I think a lot of it's just using tact and sort of expressing, this is just a precaution. I would just feel more comfortable if I'm just going to put this right here, as long as you are communicating as clearly and respectfully as possible. I think that's the key. But sometimes law enforcement officers lie, and they are allowed to lie to you as a tactic. But know that you are legally allowed to record them. That is a protection and a right that you have. Whether those rights are violated sometimes, yes, we've had a case where a law enforcement officer saw an older gentleman in his front yard recording and came by and threw the floor on the phone on the ground and destroyed it. Well, that was a violation of his civil rights. So we are able to bring a lawsuit forward to get that matter resolved, because the gentleman was in his full rights to be able to do that. But if you start interfering with a law enforcement investigation, that's the part that is important to sort of manage and balance, that you're still being respectful and giving law enforcement their space, especially if it doesn't involve you directly. But if it involves you directly, you're completely entitled to either record it yourself or ensure that the law enforcement officer has their body camera on. If you're comfortable with doing either, we can always do an IBRA, which is the public records request, or you could do it yourself. It's a very easy process. Just make sure that you write down when the incident happened, possibly who the officer was, like a badge number or an officer name, and then you can request those files.
The only thing that I will add, that the only place that is not allowed and you cannot record is on the international, in the port of entries, okay? Other than that, anywhere, like Zoila said, and I always ask them, you know, give space. If you are recording and you are in your car or in your house, give space, move away, okay, from the officer, so the officer can do, you know, what he needs to do. If you are not able to record because they take away your phone, start recording in your mind, okay? Please, what time, like Zoila mentioned, what time, who, the name of the officer, then the number of the badge, and what happened. And then as soon as you can, write it down.
Thank you. It seems like the gentleman did not get my email, so I will just throw it in the chat. Around warrants, I would say invite Maria Coronado to do a presentation to your organization and any of your constituents, because we can show you examples of a judicial warrant and how they look different from an administrative warrant. A judicial warrant will be signed by a judge. And so I think to sort of get a little bit more detail on that, the best way is an example. And so I would say if you have the capacity and the time to do a even Zoom presentation, you know, with some of your organization and the people that your organization serves, or if you would like to learn more and educate your staff a little bit broader, Maria Coronado is a fantastic resource and has some of those examples teed up. Thank you.
And also I do know your rights for farm workers, students, LGBTQ community, people with a disability, right? So we can tailor the Know Your Rights presentation for the group that you are sharing with. And I put my information, and also Zoila and Juan share my information and Zoila's information. Thank you.
I'm just going to address Aja Brooks' hello question really quick. Not that I know of, but it's definitely something I'd be happy to look into. I know that we were involved around the Crown Act at the legislative session, advocating for Black members of our community to be able to wear their hair however they wish in a natural fashion without these stereotypical European expectations of what professionalism looks like. But aside from that, I'm not super familiar with any involvement around the Black Education Act, but I'd be happy to look into it and reach out to you.
Okay, and then Sila Quintana has a hand up. Sila, we will ask you to unmute here if you want to ask your question, and then we are going to move on just in the interest of time, just to make sure we get to everyone's presentations. I know there are a lot of questions and there's a lot of important information here, but you have contact information for all of our presenters if you want to reach out. So Sila Quintana, are you able to ask?
Yes, I'm sorry. What is the question?
You have your hand up, so I just didn't know if you
I'm
wanted to ask
sorry.
a question live.
I think it's an accident.
Okay, no problem. We just didn't want to.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And so like I said, I know there are some additional questions. We'll have some more time for Q&A at the end, but I do want to give the folks from New Mexico Immigrant Law Center a chance to do their part of this presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Emma and Shalini.
Hi, everyone. Zoila, I don't know if you're able to stop the screen sharing. You can transition over.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. Let me end that.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Zoila and Maria, for that wonderful presentation. Very informative. Thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our organization, the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center. My name is Emma Race, and I supervise our intake program and some of our partnerships and social services. Shalini, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everyone. I'm Shalini Thomas. I'm a DOJ accredited representative, a supervisor manager, mostly focused on our citizenship, green card renewals, and DACAs.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll just start by talking through a little bit of the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center and who we are. We were founded in 2010 in Albuquerque, and we are a social justice organization committed to working with rather than for immigrants in New Mexico. So we do that work. We work to advance justice and equity by empowering low-income immigrant communities. And we do that in a few ways. We work towards this mission through collaborative legal services, advocacy, and education. We'll spend a little bit more time today specifically talking about the collaborative legal services because that's the largest chunk of our work. But we also do work on advocacy efforts around immigrant rights, whether that's in coalitions with other organizations or pushing for legislation. For instance, previously we have made sure that there's been legislation around a person of any immigration status being able to hold professional licensures in New Mexico. And we've performed some other advocacy efforts in line with that. And we also work on education, educating the public about immigrant rights and services available. So if there's ever a need in anyone's organization for more in-depth presentation on immigrant rights and various forms of immigration relief, we're happy to arrange something like that. In 2021, we served just over 5,000 people in 26 of the 33 counties in New Mexico. So we're able to have that reach because in large part due to our community partnerships model. So we strive to make sure that we're not duplicating services in New Mexico, given that our state has relatively robust services, especially for survivors of crimes and domestic violence, and other service providers who are really grounded in their communities. We try to make sure to utilize those people who are on the ground already and train them to identify possible immigration relief for the people that they're working with, and make sure that whatever concerns they're seeing in their more rural communities, that we're aware of that and can try to address that work. And our services are free. So we only serve low-income New Mexicans, but that is the only limiting qualification for our services. You have to be living in New Mexico and within a certain income threshold, which we determine when we screen people. And we'll talk about which types of visas we primarily provide services for in a moment, because there are some qualifications regarding what the concern of the immigrant might be. But in general, anyone who's living in New Mexico and is an immigrant can call us to get a screening. And again, our services are free to anyone that's calling. We never charge for our services. And so we definitely do depend heavily on volunteer support and pro bono support. For instance, we utilize pro bono attorneys in many of our cases, and we utilize pro bono medical professionals in cases as well. And then for people who are not necessarily an attorney or a doctor, we have a quite large volunteer network that can help with anything from technological data entry to translations, to actually providing working on the legal cases. So we would encourage anyone who's interested to get involved. That it really makes the difference for being able to provide the services we provide. So we'll just go through the main types of collaborative legal services that we offer, because that's the most relevant portion of our services to the public. We provide direct representation for many types of cases, and direct representation would be when the lawyer takes the case the whole way through. There's a contract and an attorney-client relationship. We provide direct representation for survivors of crimes, which includes domestic violence and trafficking, but also for other types of crimes, sexual assault as well. The visas for survivors of crimes, depending on the situation, may or may not have had to have been reported to law enforcement. Sometimes that's not necessary, depending on the situation. So we do offer support to survivors of crimes, and that's one way that getting the word out to people who are in a really vulnerable situation can be incredibly helpful through community outreach, so that people who have experienced something awful will be going to people that they trust in order to get information on the next steps and a pathway to a bit more stability. Another service that we provide direct representation for is for abandoned, abused, or neglected children. This is a really important facet of our work. There are many children or minors in New Mexico who qualify for a visa and don't know it, because there's not a lot of information out there around some of the types of visas for youth. So we highly encourage children, undocumented children, to get screened. People hear a lot about DACA, but there's also other options that provide more stability as well. Even if I write here abandoned, abused, or neglected children, but the definitions for those terms may be broader than many people think. And so we recommend that every undocumented child contact us to get a screening. And also we provide services for people facing evictions. This is a service that we've very recently implemented, given the stressors around the COVID-19 pandemic and then the lifting of the eviction moratorium. We've been working closely with New Mexico Legal Aid to make sure that we're able to provide eviction-related services to the immigrant community in New Mexico. Currently, it's more or less restricted to the city of Albuquerque, but we're working on filling that gap as our funding sources allow. So we also, in addition to direct representation, we provide pro se services. And pro se services is when someone's representing themselves and they are given advice on their specific case, and they're able to consult with the lawyer about the case and get instructions on how to go about their case. But we don't establish an attorney-client relationship. They represent themselves through the process, and we would just be providing support. And we tend to provide these services, this type of service, for visas that are either on some sort of scale a bit simpler, or for situations that the demand is so much greater than our ability to provide services. So we provide pro se services for citizenship and for green card renewals. So once someone has their green card, if in 3 or 5 years, depending on the situation, they want to become a citizen, we can help with that. And also if they just want to renew their green card or replace a lost or stolen green card, we can help with that as well. And we also provide services for DACA applications and renewals, whether that be someone who doesn't yet have DACA and wants to see if they're eligible, or someone who needs to renew their DACA application. And we also provide pro se services for asylum seekers. This is one of the largest demands that we see in our community, and we're able to support people through the process of going to their court hearings and helping them understand the process and to file some form of relief so that they can stay in the country a little bit longer while their court process is going through. And then the last arm of our legal services is our legal orientation programs at ICE detention centers. There are a few ICE detention centers in New Mexico. There are two that are closest to Albuquerque that we're able to provide services at, and those are in Torrance County and Cibola County. And prior to the pandemic, we would go in person and perform in-person workshops at each of those detention centers. We've shifted our model slightly and have been collaborating with other organizations doing detention related work so that at this point we're providing most services over the phone at the initial stage, and so that's what our legal orientation programs look like at this point is a phone-based conversation with the person who's detained to just give them some information about what's going on and some possible options for their next steps. Okay, so given that those are more or less our services, and of course we do take other types of cases depending on a case-by-case basis and depending on changing immigration laws. You know, it's always best to just give us a call, even if you didn't see your particular type of case listed on the previous slide. But how to access our services. We offer legal consultations to the general public. So you can call us, that's our phone number. Our hours are Mondays 1 through 5, so just in the afternoon on Mondays, or Tuesday through Friday, we're open all day, but we close for lunch from 12 to 1. So Tuesdays through Fridays, 9 to 12 and 1 to 5. Those are our hours. And when you call, you'd be scheduled for a phone appointment to be screened for eligibility for our services, or you might be referred to another organization if it's not something that we work on. One thing that comes up frequently is that we do not provide services for family-based immigration visas, which is a son petitioning for his mother or a spouse petitioning for a spouse, something like that. We typically are not focusing on those visas, or if an employer wants to petition to bring a petition for a worker, or situations in which the immigrant is actually outside of the country still, we wouldn't be able to help with those types of things. But like I said, you can definitely call us and we'll either schedule you for an intake, or we would make sure that you know which organizations you can contact about your concern. One thing to mention in terms of what we can provide, it's really, I love when we're answering calls from our reception line. It is wonderful to be able to refer people to other services, even if they're not asking about something that we can't provide. And I say this because there are a lot of situations in which someone might find someone who's actually not incredibly reputable to work on their immigration proceedings. In New Mexico and in various parts of the country, we see notary publics, for instance, or notarios advertising immigration legal services, which is actually unlawful to do. And we like to publicize that information because many people don't know that there is a better option. Whether it's our organization, the other nonprofits in New Mexico who provide these services, or other private attorneys that we know of who are reputable, notarios or notary publics are not necessarily keeping up to date on the constant changes that are going on in immigration law. It feels like every day some judge is doing something that's going to impact so many people's cases. So finding someone reputable to provide those immigration services is really crucial. We've just seen too many times that someone might be, we will see their application and realize that it was filled out in a way that's not complete, and it might be putting that person at risk of deportation. The risks are so high, and so we want to make sure that everyone throughout the state knows that we are an option and that there's other organizations or attorneys in the state that are reputable immigration attorneys who could help out with a case. So we're super happy to refer people, even if we're not going to be the ones to provide the service. And of course, if you want to be involved with our services, you can also call us. We can get you in contact with our volunteer coordinator or pro bono coordinator, and our website is just nmilc.org, listed right up here if you want to check out the other ways to get in touch with us. And one last caveat as well about getting in touch with us through the phone is that we do experience quite a lot of phone calls. And so if you're not able to get through, it's important to just keep trying. I believe Juan has put our Shalini and my contact information into the chat, and you're always welcome to reach out to us for assistance if you're not able to get through on that phone line. But just continuing to call on during our business hours is the best way to get in touch with us. And it looks like a bunch of things have come in on the chat, but that's the end of our general overview of NMILC.
Thank you, Emma. Just to reiterate a few things while we're looking through the chat. The most important thing I want to reiterate, even though Emma already said it, because you cannot say it enough, is how important it is that people speak with reputable nonprofits or immigration attorneys who know what they're doing. When someone is undocumented, immigration doesn't know that they exist. Maybe the IRS knows that they exist. Maybe PNM, the electric company, knows they exist. The bank knows they exist. School knows that they exist. Immigration does not know that they exist. And if they file an application with immigration that they are not eligible for, or they file it for something they are eligible for, but it's filled out incorrectly, that means immigration knows that they exist. And best case scenario, it goes well. Best case scenario, we or another nonprofit jump in before things go poorly. Worst case scenario is that they are referred to immigration court, is that they get a deportation order, is that they are deported to their home country. It is so important that the questions about what am I eligible for, that applications for status go through people who know what they're doing. And we know that there's so much desperation in the community. So because if I'm undocumented and my neighbor got status and my neighbor went to a notario and it went really well for them, my hope will make me say, well, that's my option. That's who I'm going to go to. Even though an attorney told me I wasn't eligible, even though a nonprofit told me I wasn't eligible, hope springs eternal. So please, please, please encourage the people that you're working with to not trust their neighbor, to not trust the notarios, to talk to a reputable immigration attorney. There's a list on the New Mexico State Bar of Immigration Attorneys. There's a list on the American Immigration Lawyers Association of Immigration Attorneys, or talk to us. We are fully remote. We are doing a lot of outreach, thanks to Emma and her team throughout New Mexico, to try and get more calls from throughout New Mexico. But in the meantime, we do intakes over the phone. We do the vast majority of our applications over the phone. We want to do more services throughout New Mexico. Please have your community members call us. And yes, and if they can, there's also a very good list, and I'll put this on IMMI.org, has a list of immigration nonprofits. So if we said we couldn't help, or I don't know, you want to talk to someone who's closer to you, go to them. That's a good reputable list. I cannot stress that enough. And the other thing I wanted to reiterate is, yes, the questions about what am I eligible for are amazing. Even if it is a family petition, we'll still do an intake. Even if maybe they're over income, we'll still do an intake. We get income information as we do the intake, not before. So we will do an intake with anybody. We will give good advice to anybody. All we won't do is, we just may not be able to then take their case. Yeah, and I am not seeing any specific questions for us.
Uh,
But
Shalini and Emma, there is a question. Somebody has their hand raised. So Monica Lopez, you have your hand raised. If you have a question, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question. Go ahead, Monica.
it looks like on the Q&A, she responded, no question, sorry.
Oh, okay. No problem. And if anyone else has any questions, you can either put it in the chat or raise your hand. We have about another 20 minutes or so. I would also like to let everyone know that this presentation is being recorded and will be available on the New Mexico Access to Justice website. All those registrants for this webinar will be sent that link when it is posted, as well as all of the presenter slides. So again, for everyone who is registered, you will receive the confirmation on when the video is posted and all the information that was presented here by the individuals today. All right, well, it appears there are no other questions. If any of our panelists have any other last thoughts they would like to share with individuals, please feel free to chime in at this point.
I would like to share that I serve on the board of directors for the immigration law section, and the services that New Mexico Immigrant Law Center provides to the community and throughout the state is incredible. There's no other organization that is doing that scope of work, and that really helps to try to connect people to the resources that they need. And so I know that a lot of times immigration issues intersect across family law, tenant, whatever it might be, but there is so much around access to be able to afford representation that New Mexico Immigrant Law Center has really taken the lead in providing these services to the community. And so I would say that check out their website. They're doing a lot of this work. They do take on T visas and U visas and some asylum cases. And so we're all limited in capacity, but we really do try to help in whatever ways we can. And if we can't help you, we try to direct you to an organization that will. And so I just want to say thank you to the commission for making time for this presentation, because it's so crucial, especially as we see some, very problematic issues happening in our world around asylum seekers and refugees as wars are breaking out and natural disasters are happening. And some of our very fundamental values, like access to asylum, are being deferred in our country right now. And so thank you for making time to be here today and learn a little bit more about the work that we do. Thank you, Juan.
We do have one question. It is, how does someone become a non-attorney provider?
I think I can answer that. I'm guessing your question is about DOJ accredited representatives. And yes, that is what I am. I am not an attorney. DOJ accredited representatives have permission from the DOJ to represent immigrants either solely before USCIS or before USCIS and the courts. In order to do so, you must be with a nonprofit. This is not something you can do on your own. You must be with a registered 501c3. If you reach out to me specifically, I'm happy to send you some more resources, but a really good place to start is just search for DOJ accredited representative, and you will get to the DOJ's website that talks about what is required. What you have to do is submit an application to the DOJ, one showing that your nonprofit is a nonprofit, charges either no fees or low fees, and has the knowledge and ethics to be able to properly represent immigrants before immigration. And then as an individual, you also submit an application at the same time that says the same thing. It talks about your experience doing this work, who's going to supervise you, who you're going to turn to if you have questions, to try and convince them that even though you're not an attorney, you do have the knowledge needed to be able to properly represent immigrants before immigration, because again, bad help hurts. And so even the DOJ wants to make sure that you know what you're doing, and more importantly, you know what you don't know, so that you can make sure that you're providing good advice and referring when needed.
And I'll also just mention in a broader sense as well, if you're someone who wants to be involved with the general effort to provide services to immigrants, we partner with a lot of organizations around the state to empower caseworkers and counselors to be able to identify people that might have immigration needs. And then we have a way to refer people more directly to us to have a smoother handoff. And so if you work for an organization that you think that might be a useful partnership, please do reach out to me. And if you're someone who's not affiliated with an organization, I would encourage you to contact us about volunteer opportunities, and we can orient you to various aspects of providing legal services, and so you can see if more involvement makes sense.
And I love that question because law school is so expensive. I fully encourage anyone that is interested in practicing some sort of immigration area, BIA certification is the way to go. If I had known that before I got into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to go to law school, I probably would have done that. So that's a fantastic way to get engaged in this work.
Right, I don't see any other questions posted. I just want to remind folks that this is one of our community webinars. We have a series of webinars covering civil legal issues. You can go to the Access to Justice Project website to see previously recorded webinars. They cover a variety of topics: landlord-tenant issues, guardianship, kinship, expungement, and a variety of other topics. Our next webinar will be on 2 weeks from today, on Wednesday, March 23rd at noon also. It will be on migrant labor in our agricultural sector and talking about issues specific to that community. If you are on our listserv, you will receive notification shortly about registering for that webinar. Again, it is free. If you are not on our listserv, you can send me your contact information to juanrabeta@gmail.com, and I will add you to our listserv so that you can receive notification of future webinars. Again, I want to thank all of our presenters today. Thank you for the information. It's so helpful to have people become informed about this topic, which affects many communities throughout the entire state. And I look forward to seeing the rest of you attendees rather, at our upcoming webinars. And that being, and I see no other questions, I think we'll just end here. We'll end a little early, and thank you all, everyone.